Welcome to the Camden County Chamber of Commerce's Get in Your Business podcast, your go-to source for all things small business in Camden County. I'm your host, Alison Shores, and each week we'll be diving into the heart of our community, bringing you inspiring interviews with local small business owners, insightful discussions on issues that matter, and the latest on events that could impact your business. Plus, don't miss out on our expert tips to help your business grow and thrive. Whether you're a budding entrepreneur or a seasoned business pro, this is the podcast for you. So let's get down to business. What's up, Camden County? Alison Shores, Camden County Chamber of Commerce, and you are catching the 24th episode of the Getting in Your Business podcast. The Getting in Your Business podcast is made possible by our Chairman Circle sponsors, Comcast Business, Georgia Power Company, Hargray, Plug Power, St.Marys DDA, TDS Telecom, and Ameris Bank. All right, so let's get down to business. I'm so excited today because in the studio I have one of my favorite people, Keith Post from the St.Marys Submuseum. So thank you for being here, Keith.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be with you, Allison.
Well, let's get down to business. First things first, I want to know a little bit about Keith Post because I don't know that people know. So let's hear a little bit about you, where you're from, how you ended up in Camden County.
Well, that's an interesting story. So I'm a military brat.
Okay.
Unlike my father, I went in the Navy, but my dad was in the Coast Guard.
Okay.
For 29 years. He was a retired Master Chief. I lost him a couple of years ago, but he used to love to tease me that he was senior to me in more ways than one because I retired as a senior chief. He retired as a Master Chief. Interestingly enough, his dad, my grandfather, was in the Navy. In World War I, he was on a submarine chaser based out of San Diego. So I have a lot of military in my family.
Yeah.
I have 4 cousins who served in Vietnam, 1 in the Marines, 2 in the Army, 1 in the Air Force, and I lost the other one. Forgot what branch he was in. 2 Air Force, 1 Marine, and 2 Army, 1 Air Force, 1 Marine. Thankfully, they all came home.
Wow.
And my Uncle Al, who was my big inspiration for going in the Navy, was at the landing in Normandy in 1944. Oh. And my dad was my big inspiration for going in the military, but my uncle was my big inspiration for choosing the Navy.
Wow.
So I was born in New York, but lived all over the country. I started school in Hawaii, went to school in Oklahoma, New York, New Jersey. My dad retired when we lived in Oklahoma, and we moved back to New York to where my mom and dad are from, and went 2 years of high school there. So I graduated, went upstate New York for a year to college and wasn't meant to be a college boy and moved down to Florida to be with my grandparents. I think my grandmother, who was a school teacher, thought if she could get her claws in me, she'd get me back in school. But that was not to be. The Navy called, and the rest is history. So I joined the Navy, actually joined in Jacksonville and went to boot camp in Orlando and then retired here at St. Marys. I was stationed at the base here 3 different times. Sort of fell in love with the area. I was here refitting on the Pulaski, 87, 88, where I met Vice Admiral Al Konechny, who lives here in town, and then came back here to go to school. After TTF opened, I went to school for 10 months to learn all about Trident sonar, and then I was here on the commissioning crew of the Nebraska and did 3 patrols on the Nebraska before I left to go to D.C., and Cape Canaveral and back to D.C. And then when I retired, I came back here and wasn't sure what I wanted to be when I grew up. I just knew here's where I wanted to do it. Yeah. So I got very involved in the community. I was president of the Navy League for 3 years, state president for 6, got involved with Kiwanis and the college and the chamber, and was on the museum board. And so that's how I got started here.
That's crazy. So, and now you went from being on the museum board to executive director of the museum. But before we get into that, let's talk about the museum itself and how it even came about, because I don't even know if most people know that we have the St.Marys Submuseum downtown in St. Marys.
That is true. It's amazing. I try to wear my shirt a lot, or I wear a hat or something, or as I go about town just to promote the museum, and you'll be amazed at some of the people that come up to me that I've never been there, and they've lived here all their life.
Yes.
Or I'll run into people that remember what it used to be, and what it used to be, for folks that don't know, the museum, the building that it's in was built in 1911. It's
1911.
One of the oldest buildings downtown, and it was the old St. Mary's movie theater. It didn't have the second floor in there like it does now. And it didn't have the glass doors out front. That little lobby there to the left was the ticket booth where you bought your ticket to go to the movie.
So that was the movie theater.
That was the movie theater. And then in 1936, the Lucas family that owned it donated it to the city of St. Marys. And the city used it as a theater. Then it was used as the youth center. Then it was boarded up. They actually had a fire up in the projection room. And then in the early 90s, a group of folks got together, some citizens, some community activists, some base leadership, some crusty old retired guys, and a young lady named Sheila McNeil, who you know well.
I do.
She was really the catalyst that got this thing going. And negotiations with the city happened, and it was decided since the building was boarded up, not being used, and we have the best, most modern submarine base in the world at Kings Bay, we ought to have a museum to celebrate that history and heritage. So that's how the idea for the museum came to be. And in my mind, it's one of the greatest examples of a public-private partnership that works. And what I mean by that is the city still owns the building, but the museum board back then and now pay all the freight. They did all the fundraising. To renovate the building. It was gutted to the four walls inside. A second floor was added. So everything in the building was new as of 1996 when we opened. New sheetrock, new air conditioning, new plumbing, new electric, all of that. So it's a great thing. We have about 4,400 square feet of display space. And we really, when we opened, March of 1996, Admiral Gene Fluckey, one of our heroes from World War II, commanding officer of the USS Barb, he was our guest speaker. So we really got started off on a good foot with a true piece of living history with us. He donated the life ring from the USS Barb, the submarine he commanded during the war, and some photographs are on our first floor. But really a great way to get started.
Now, how did you become the executive director?
Well, that's an interesting story. As many people in town know, I'm a recovering politician. I actually, one of the crazy things I did after I retired was I ran for office and got elected, and I served on St. Mary's City Council for 4 years. And I say that jokingly, but it was a great experience, and I'm very proud of my time on council. We did a lot of good things. It was a tough time after the housing crisis. We had to refinance the bond issue for the sewer plant that we built. A lot of hard work was done by a lot of people back then. But while I was on city council, my predecessor, John Krause, was at the Submarine Veterans Convention in Cincinnati, Ohio, and unfortunately had a heart attack in the front seat of his pickup truck, and he passed away 4 days later. So
oh my goodness,
we had to have an emergency board meeting, and I was in North Carolina at the time getting my dad through shoulder surgery recovery, and so I had my brother come up and relieve me, and I came down here, and I sort of got voluntold by Sheila McNeil that I would take over the museum interim for 6 months. I agreed to do it for 6 months. That was in 2010.
She was good at that.
Yes, she was.
And we all listened. Whatever
exactly.
she volunteered us to do.
Exactly.
Continue.
So as I tell people, I hate how I got the job, but I love being there. So after my first few months of drinking from a fire hose and learning all the ins and outs of everything that had to be done, when we shut down for a couple of weeks for stand down, I realized that this really was my calling. It was a lot more fun than selling houses, and it's in my blood, submarine and this Navy thing.
And you're passionate about it. And I love it when people are passionate about what they do, because it just shows and reflects, and people just, you can't help but kind of catch that passion yourself. I know that's happened with me because now we take the military tour into the museum every Wednesday, and to see how excited they are and the questions that they ask, and they all want to check out, some things that are in there. So maybe let's tell people what's in the museum.
Absolutely.
What's actually there.
So we're very fortunate. About 90 to 95% of the stuff that we have in the museum was donated by veterans or family members of veterans. The rest came from the Navy, or some of it's actually on loan to us from the Naval History and Heritage Command up in D.C. And one particular artifact that we have that's very popular is the periscope, and that's actually on loan to us from the Navy base. TRF, the Trident Reef facility on the base, owns the periscope. They come and do maintenance on it periodically.
So let's tell people what the periscope is, because not everybody knows.
You bet. So the periscope is what's on the submarine that gets raised when the submarine goes to periscope depth, or rather on the surface. It enables them to see out of the sub. And our boats that are based here have two of them. Our newer submarines, the Virginia class, don't have this kind of periscope anymore. They telescope in and out of the sail, and they rotate, and they have a big TV monitor in control. So it's actually a lot safer. One less hole in the hull, and you got a whole lot more eyes looking at what's out there instead of just one eye through the periscope.
But the periscope works.
The periscope works. It's in a fixed position. And you can rotate around. You can see across the river to Fernandina, see people out on boats in the river, and it's really it's
so cool.
And the kids love it. So it's a great. One of the great exhibits that we have at the museum. But the museum is basically divided into three sections. So downstairs is the submarine force started in 1900. So our displays downstairs are World War I, World War II era. So from 1900 to 1945 when the war ended, and diesel boats basically is what's downstairs. Then you go in our stairwell, and that's our battle flag stairway. And all the way up until almost the very top, we have battle flags that have been donated by crew members of subs. We have one that's a replica that was made for us by a World War II veteran who wanted to donate his original. It's the USS Pintado. The original flag was donated to the Pacific Fleet War Museum out in Fredericksburg, Texas, which is where Admiral Nimitz was from. But Ziggy Dabrowski loved our museum, so he took it and had a replica made of it before he donated his flag to Admiral Nimitz's museum, and then he gave us a replica. He's since passed away. He used to live down near Daytona Beach, but that's in our stairwell. And then we have a great picture there that's 10 feet by 2 feet from our World War II memorial, which I'm sure we'll talk about here in a minute. But that was from 2015, and there are 24, I believe, World War II vets in there. We have Admiral Konecny's in there. He was the guest speaker that year, but that was taken, and there are only 4 of those men in that picture left.
Wow.
That's probably the hardest part of my job is losing these heroes, and I've given the eulogy at 2 of their funerals and been to many more.
Well, you've known them for a really long time, and been an important. You've played important roles in their lives, and they've played important roles in your life, and so So then at the top of the stairwell, you sort of transition into the nuclear Navy, and around the very top of the stairway, we have a brow banner from the Nautilus, which was the first nuclear boat commissioned 70 years ago in 1954. And so that's at the top of our stairwell. And then you go inside, and upstairs is all about the nuclear naval. We have one case of World War II models upstairs that we didn't have room for on the first floor. But other than that, everything up there is about the nuclear Navy. We have a case in the back. It's all about fast attacks. We actually have water from the North Pole from ISEX operations. That's
up
what
there.
I was going to say, that because that's my favorite part. Every time you tell people that there's water from the North Pole, I'm like, we have water from the North Pole. I don't know why I think that's so cool, but I think it is so cool.
For those people that like baseball, we also have 2 bats made by the Louisville Slugger Company. We used to have a USS Louisville, and they were the first 688 to launch Tomahawks in combat. And the Louisville Slugger Company made a bat to commemorate that, and the CO gave it to our museum, and they also made a bat for the museum. So you'll see that in that case. Then on the other corner, on the left side, is all about boomers, starting with the George Washington. We actually have a copy of the message they sent to President Eisenhower in 1960 when the first test launch of the A-1 happened. And it says, Polaris from out of the deep to target perfect. That was in 1960. So we've been doing this nuclear weapons business a long time. Yeah. Then we have 8 cases on the side, on the left side. Those are the 8 submarines that are home ported here in Kings Bay. We give each crew, each ship a box, and it's for them to display whatever they want in there. They update. In fact, the USS Rhode Island is updating theirs right now. That one's missing, but they're working on it. Then in the center of the back of the room, we have 2 cases that are back-to-back. On the right side is a Russian display case. And in that case, we have a couple of unique artifacts. One is a propaganda poster out of the Moscow subway system. It's got a little caricature of a U.S. submarine with a flag popping out of the sail, and in Russian it says myth or reality. And then we also have a navigation light and a diver's plate from the submarine Kursk, which went down in 2000 in the Barents Sea. They had a torpedo explode in the front of the boat, and this boat went down in salvageable water very fast. They didn't let us help them at the beginning, but apparently we did something for them because the Russians gave the American Embassy in Moscow one of the navigation lights and a diver's plate from the submarine to thank us for whatever we did for them. And the naval attaché at that embassy sent it to us. So we're very fortunate to have that piece of Russian history in the museum. And to show you the power of Facebook, after COVID, we were closed for 14 months during COVID, like a lot of other places. And when we reopened, I did a ribbon cutting, and I had the admiral from the base, the mayor, the city manager, my board president, a few other folks, Sheila, of course. And posted it on Facebook, and I got this note in Russian. And I have been to your facility, great place, best wishes, something like that. And so I wrote the guy back. Thank goodness for Google Translator.
I was about to say.
And I said, when were you at our museum? Well, it turns out he was on an inspection team that would come here to do part of the START inspections. And they actually presented my predecessor with a Russian flag, which is in that case. And I have a picture of him in that case. So I took a picture of the picture and sent it to this man in Russia.
My goodness.
That says, you're in our museum.
That is so cool.
That's a pretty, you never knew who was going to come through your museum.
You really don't.
On the other side, we have our British submarine case. And we have a lot of British artifacts that have been given to us over the years. Whenever a British boat visits, we usually get a plaque from them. We just did a reception for the Vanguard when they were here, and I will tell you, the Vanguard, we had a lot of fun with them. I got to be great friends with the CO, the XO, and the coxswain, which is like our chief of the boat. That's the senior enlisted on a British sub. And their crew did the Jacksonville. 14 of them did the half 2 did the full marathon. They did it as a fundraiser while they were here. And they raised $4,000, and they donated $2,000 to a British charity, and they donated $2,000 to our museum.
Oh, that's
so
awesome.
just a great relationship we have with them. And the British have 4 missile boats, the Vanguard, Vigilant, Victorious, and Vengeance. What a lot of people may not realize is they carry our missiles.
Yeah, that's something that I have learned recently.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to try to start spitting out any kind of facts or anything else that I know about that. But
well, that dates back a long time ago. It happened due to what happened in October of '62, which was the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Listen, Keith, that's one thing I know about from Wednesday is the Cuban Missile Crisis.
That's right.
Continue.
So Khrushchev put missiles 90 miles from Cuba, and that led to President Kennedy ordering the blockade of Cuba, the naval blockade. It's actually the most action this base saw before it became a Navy base, because this used to be an Army weapons depot.
Yep.
So vessels pulled in here to load munitions to go down there to enforce the Cuban blockade. And after that, President Kennedy and Prime Minister Macmillan of the U.S., of the UK rather, signed what's called the NASA agreement, which led to the U.S.-UK Polaris Sales Agreement. So basically, we agreed to sell or lease them our missiles for them to put on their missile subs, and they made patrols against the Soviet Union in partner with us. And that still is in place today. So they have gone through all the perturbations of the missiles, and they carry the D5 missile on the Vanguard class. So they have their own warheads, but they come here to Kings Bay to load and offload missiles.
Oh, wow.
So it's a great testament to the unique relationship that we have with the United Kingdom. So that's that case up there. And then in the up corner, right near where the stairwell is, we have a big shadow box for the George Bancroft, which is the sail that's at the front gate of the base.
Okay.
And that was one of our original 41 for Freedom. And what a lot of people may not realize is the museum raised the money to build that. Of course, Sheila being the chairman of that committee. And our agreement with the Navy was, since we're paying for it, we want it outside the fence.
So that everybody can
get to it, right?
Yes.
So the submarine base out on the West Coast, our sister base in Bangor, has the sail of the USS Woodrow Wilson, but it's in front of the training center. So if you can't get on base, you don't get to see it. So we raised the money to build that, and it's a great. And you were there, a year ago. We dedicated a bench to Sheila and Arlie out there, and so we have a shadow box there. It has the trigger key from the weapons officer safe on the Bancroft. We also have a painting that was done that we sold to raise money to help build that. And we have the ship's plaque and the commissioning plaque from the Bancroft all there in that corner. So that's just some of the things that we have upstairs. We also have a huge file cabinet collection up there, if you will, there and in the storeroom. We have a file on every submarine the Navy has had. Some boats we have more information than others. But uniquely, we have the largest collection of original World War II War Patrol reports outside the National Archives.
Really?
From 80 years ago, 85 years ago, the War Patrols. It's really an amazing collection, and we learn something there every day at the museum. And there's not a day that goes by that we don't get. Excuse me, I shouldn't say a day. Roughly a week doesn't go by where we don't get something donated from somebody. A lady came in Saturday, donated a bunch of old naval magazines that she found, Polaris magazines that she found in an attic of a house she bought. And rather than throw them away, she brought them to the museum. And we're grateful for folks that do things like that.
Absolutely. And I just think it's so cool that we have something this magnitude in, like, right here in Camden County, in downtown St. Marys. Now, have we covered everything that's in the museum? Have you ever? I
think so. We don't want to tell everything. We want people to come see it for themselves.
Exactly. But I don't even think people know that you have programs that you actually do.
We do a lot of programs. It's not just
managing and stuff. So let's talk about some of those programs that you do.
So about 9, maybe 10 years ago, Vice Admiral Kreitz, who used to be our group commander here, approached me about doing a program with midshipmen. And that's been going on ever since, except for 2020 during COVID.
And when you say midshipmen?
So midshipmen from the Naval Academy, students at the Naval Academy, as part of their training in the summer, they do familiarization tours. They go to an air base to learn about aviation. They go to a Marine Corps base to learn about the Marines. They go to a surface ship base, possibly ride a surface ship to learn about and they come to here, Bangor, San Diego, some submarine port. To get a ride on a boat, and they get lectures on the base, and they're exposed to the submarine force because we want to try to recruit them into the submarine force. So part of the curriculum is they come to the museum for a lecture from yours truly, and they get to tour the museum, and of course they get to go to Market on the Square for ice cream afterwards if they behave themselves. Anyway, so that's a great partnership that we have, and it's so exciting to see so many of these young leaders of tomorrow come to the museum to learn about submarine history. We also do that not only with midshipmen We normally have them in the month of June, and then in July, going into August, we have ROT students from universities around the country that do the same thing.
Oh, wow.
So it's a great program we have. We do a lot of programs with Boy Scouts, with youth groups. One year, I had a church group from Brunswick that asked me if they could come down. They were doing a program called Submerged in the Word. And they had about 60 kids that came, and I wasn't too sure what to think. And the pastor assured me that he would make them behave. And we had them from like kindergarten up through high school, and it was an amazing time. We had the best time. It was one evening. We did it after we were closed, and we took over the museum when they were sitting upstairs, and I gave them a little talk. We watched the movie, and they just had an absolute great time. So this is an example of some of the things we do. We partner with people on the base to do re-enlistments, retirement ceremonies. We have one coming up in December, a retirement ceremony for a senior chief on base. We just had a re-enlistment from a young sailor off the West Virginia on Tuesday. And then our signature event of the year is coming up the end of next month. And that's probably, aside from, another thing we do is we partner with the Chiefs community on base. So during Chief season, we have a CPO work day. And this year, because of the weather, we didn't do any painting, but we did clean up outside, and they did a field day on the second floor. So we have a great partnership with the Chiefs. And next Friday is promotion day when they get pinned in their new uniform. So from 8 o'clock in the morning till about 6 o'clock at night, every hour we have a different command from the base will come and pin their chief petty officers surrounded by submarine history.
I just love that.
It's one of
so
it is
cool.
my favorite as a retired senior chief. It's my favorite day of the year when we do that. But coming up in October, the end of next month, this will be the 36th year that we host our Submarine Veterans of World War II Memorial Week. And it was started by Admiral Konechny back when he was the Commodore here at Squadron 16 in 1988. And it continues through now. And we have 5 days jam-packed, and we have people come from all over the country, from Seattle, from Groton, and all kinds of places in between. And we have scheduled to be with us 2 World War II veterans this year, Pat Zalakias from California and Joe Dietz from Indiana. And as part of the event, the focus is the memorial ceremony we have Friday morning, and we honor all submariners. We toll the bells for all of the boats that we've lost, all 65 of them, and as well as submariners. We involve the high school. Our young people come and sing from Volume 1. They're there. We have the Navy Band there. This year we have the head of the submarine force is going to be the guest speaker along with Admiral Worth. So it's a great ceremony, great tribute to our heritage and our history and those that have gone before us. We also do a barbecue. The chiefs from the Squadron 36 cook us barbecue, and at that barbecue, hopefully we have a few. Last year we had 2, one from the West Virginia, one from the Rhode Island, get pinned. They earned their dolphins, and that World War II veteran gets to pin that dolphin on them, which is I don't think those kids realize just how special it is until later on in life. But and last year we had 12 of the British sailors from the Vanguard get pinned by our World War II vets, which was a big honor. And
That's so neat.
Also at the ceremony, we had the XO from the Vanguard rang the bell for all the British subs we lost in World War II, which we pay tribute to as well. So that's a great way. We have a steak night. The chiefs from TRF cook steak for us, and we have a big dinner at the training center. If you've been to the training center before, you know that long corridor. We have a table stretched the whole length of the corridor. It's a great time of fellowship and rekindling old friendships that these guys have had for so many years. It's really a phenomenal week.
Yeah, and I just you do so much in our community with the base, with the museum. I mean, you're helping them out at like holiday times. You just have so much going on. You're helping on our military affairs committee, Navy League. There's just so much that you're involved in. Now, who is on your board of directors? I don't know that I know that.
So we have, that's a good question, Allison. We are a 501c3, so we're a nonprofit. We don't get any direct government funding. As I said, we have a great partnership with the city, so they give us the building, and we pay all the freight there. That's why we charge admission, while we have memberships, while we seek donations, we get grants. We get a grant from a foundation in Ohio every year, the John J. and Mary Schiff Foundation. They give us a $75,000 grant every year, which is an amazing tribute to their father, who was a World War II veteran. He was not a submariner, but he was a friend of Sheila. This gives you an example of the power of Sheila. She and Jack were very active in the National Navy League, and at one meeting one time, she asked him to join the museum as a member when we were first starting to be built. And what's it going to cost me, Sheila? $20, Jack. It's $20 to be a member of the museum. That's all you want? Yeah, I want $20. Well, he actually sent stock in the Cincinnati Financial Corporation, which he was the chairman of, to the museum. They actually had to cash it in to finish the building. But every year after that, he gave a donation. And when he passed away, his sons and daughter started this foundation, and they have kept us going. So it's a great tribute. But I have a 14-member board I work for. Tom Lackner is our board president this year. Bill Carrera is our vice president. Ermal Konechny is our treasurer. And Angela Wigger is our secretary. We have both Angela from the St. Marys Tourism Office as well as Tanya Harvey from the Kingsland Tourism Office that built great synergy there, great teamwork. I have a couple of crusty old retired Navy people on there. So we have a great team. Admiral Spencer's wife, Brenda, is on there, as well as Captain Boner from the base EO's wife, Shelley, is on there. So we have great Jace Hastert's a retired Navy chief. I know I'm missing somebody, but
you've got good people.
I've got good people, and they're Mike Reeling, Kirk Gergen. They're all retired as well. Kirk and I were on the Nebraska together, and Mike and I are both sonar techs. So these are people that are passionate about what we do as well. So I have a great support team there. And I'm very grateful for that. Very grateful.
Now, I want to bring up something that I know some people, I've seen it talked about, and it's the rumor that you guys are moving. Maybe some future plans.
We are, and it's there are much more upside than there are downside. We've had a couple of calls, actually, a couple of people not too happy, a couple of people very supportive, but let me just set the record straight so everybody knows.
Please.
So we're still negotiating with the city, but the city has offered us about 9,000 square feet in the new City Hall complex, which is in the old Express Scripts building. And while that may not sound exciting to some people, it is very exciting to me, and I'll tell you why. Here are the main reasons why I think this is a win-win for us. First off, the building that we're in now, we can't expand. We can't grow on either side. We can't grow out the back.
And you're still getting donations.
And we're still getting donations. I have 3 climate-controlled storage facilities right now, as well as a room at TTF on base with stuff that has been donated. So we don't have room to display what we have now. And I will tell you, flooding is a challenge.
I bet.
And downtown at the waterfront, as you know, we got hit 2 years in a row by hurricanes. We lost our roof 1 year. The next year we lost our air conditioner. We had 13 inches of water in the building. We were threatened with a storm surge of 15 feet downtown. And on a Friday, again, this is an example of the partnership we have the base. I made a couple of phone calls, and I had 35 sailors down there. And
I know, because I always call, and I'm like, do you need anything? The base got me taken care of. I got to take your people always have.
We're very grateful, very grateful. And the Coast Guard as well, the MSST unit on Point Peter Road was there helping as well. And we moved everything off the first floor to the Navy base for safe storage. And we took all our battle flags out of the stairwell. We couldn't move anything else really.
But I don't think people understand that that's a chore.
It is.
Like, there's a lot of stuff in that museum. Like, just now, it is packed to the brim, and I'm not gonna lie, that
and
there's so
things
much
that we have are priceless. And even though we have flood insurance, you don't replace World War II battle flags with flood insurance. You might get new equipment, new cabinets, new carpet, new everything else, but you're not going to get a new battle flag. So that's some of the problems that we have with our current location. While it's a beautiful spot, and having the periscope there to see out over the river and being down there, and the synergy that we have is great. But the new facility offers a lot of things that we don't have currently. One, more than double the space that we have now. 2, it's a blank canvas. We get to build it as we like inside. It's a warehouse area that we get to make how we want, more modern, more state-of-the-art, all of that stuff. So that's a benefit. Parking. I told you about our Chief Rocking Day next Friday. One of the challenges we have is parking down there. I will probably put between 500 and 600 people through the museum that day. And parking is a challenge. Every hour we have 50 to 100 people in that building. So parking. In the new facility, there's parking out the gazoo there. So it's a new building. We can make it how we want. We have parking out the gazoo. And if that building floods, there's a whole lot of people in St. Marys that have problems besides me.
Right.
So So I see it as a win-win. So we're closer to the base.
Mm-hmm.
We're across the street from our host hotel, the Shore Stay that we use for our World War II memorial every year. We're closer to the interstate. So I see it as a win-win for us to have this opportunity. I'm grateful to the city. Once we get our agreement hammered out with them, then we'll start a capital campaign. Already I have received some donations in advance. And you know, we have a lot of sub-vets around the country that are rooting for us. In fact, this Saturday, I have First Coast sub-vets from Jacksonville. They meet out at Mayport at the American Legion. Once a year, they come up here to have their meeting at the museum. And so Saturday, they will be here, and then we're going to go over and take a look at where the new building is going to be, and then they're going to have lunch at the Horse and Cow. So moving the museum is going to be a challenge, but it's an exciting challenge.
It is exciting.
The opportunity to create new exhibits with some of the stuff we have in storage, all of those things are going to be a great benefit to our community. And I agree with, I was at a dinner the other night at MOA, and the assistant city manager, Charlie Williams, talked about the Midtown area needing a facelift, basically. And I think the new city hall being there and the museum, I think will be part of that.
Absolutely.
Part of that facelift.
Yeah.
So I'm excited. It's going to be a fun time.
Yeah, I think it's going to be great. Now, I love your building now just because I love the history that it was an old movie theater, but that doesn't mean that something great can't.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I controlled things and I had to say, I would move the Welcome Center there because
absolutely
of the synergy that would create with Cumberland Island National Seashore, with the waterfront park, with all the festivals that are downtown, and between you, me, and the wall. If that were to happen, I will want to work with TRF, the city, and the museum to leave the periscope there, to do a little display there to whet people's appetite to want to come to the museum, and also much better for them to look out on the river than come up and look at the parking lot.
Listen, I'm like a little kid. When I go in there, I still look through the periscope, like just because I think it's so cool, because I don't have any Navy ties, really. I know my grandfather was in the Navy, but he died before I was born. So for me, being in this community, being with Sheila and you, I have just learned so much. And now doing this military tour, getting to know, Captain Boner and Al Konechny, and it's just been crazy, but it is so cool. And it's just so nice to have it right here in our community. Are there very many, submarine museums around that are out in the public? So
the Navy has what's called the Naval History and Heritage Command. It's based at the Navy Yard up in Washington, D.C., and I believe, if I remember right, there are 14 museums that are part of that. So official Navy museums, like the Blue Angels over in Pensacola, the Navy Museum up there in D.C. But there are 2 submarine-related museums that the Navy owns. One is up in Groton, which is where the Nautilus, the first nuclear submarine, is on display. That's the only nuclear boat, that's not in commission that you can tour. And that's at that Navy Museum up there. They just did a couple of $1 million overhaul on her. They put her in dry dock, all that sort of stuff. Remember that boat's 70 years old. It was commissioned in 1954. And then out on the West Coast, we have the Undersea Warfare Museum in Keyport, which is the West Coast Submarine Museum. So those are 2 official Navy museums. Then around the country, we have one of the biggest museums that's private, that's a 501c3 like us, is out in Hawaii. And they have the USS Bowfin, a World War II museum. A lot of people come to our museum thinking that we have a submarine museum. Yeah. That's a double-edged sword. Yeah. I wish we did in some ways, but in some ways I'm glad we don't, because the maintenance headache on a submarine is tremendous, and the cost is tremendous. In Charleston at Patriots Point, they used to have the Clamagore, and it got taken away because they didn't spend money on it, the dry dock it, and the hull started to be compromised, so the Navy took it back. But there are a lot of places that have a submarine but don't have a big museum, like the ones I just described. So, for instance, the USS Cod is in Cleveland. Yeah. Up at the Intrepid Museum up in New York City, they have the Grayback, which is there as part of the exhibit. The Bowfin I mentioned in Hawaii, the Pompano is in San Francisco, the Croaker is up in Buffalo, the Lionfish is in Massachusetts. We have them, the Drum, the oldest World War II boat that's not in service, that's a museum, is over in Mobile. And Gianna, who works for me at the museum, her grandfather, Willie, was a torpedoman on that boat. He did 10 war patrols on the USS Drum, and he used to come down to us every year. He passed away a couple of years ago, just shy of 95, but amazing place. So we have them all. The Rakewinds up in Pittsburgh. They're in places you wouldn't believe. Believe it or not, there is a submarine in Oklahoma.
Really?
The USS Batfish is in Muskogee, Oklahoma. In fact, a few years ago, they had heavy flooding there due to rains, and the Batfish tried to get underway. There's some photographs of them trying to lasso it there to tie it to some trees so it wouldn't float down the river.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're one other thing I want to mention that some people may not know, and we're very proud of this organization. During COVID, a group of people got together from museums around Georgia to form what's called the Georgia World War II Heritage Trail. So we are one of 11 museums that partnered to form this collaborative, if you will. Yeah. So we're all members of, in fact, there's a logo at the front of the museum. It talks about it. We have a website, and you can link to all 11 sites. And the closest one to us is up on St. Simon's, the World War II Homefront Museum. We have a museum over in Douglas, the World War II Flight Training Museum, the Mighty Eighth up in Savannah, just to name a few. At the Army base over on the west side of the state, there's one. There's the aviation museums. There's one way up in Toccoa, Georgia. We're the very southern museum. Toccoa is the Currahee Museum is the very northern museum. But it's a great collaboration
that's awesome.
between them. And we also, for those folks interested, we have a gift shop.
You do have a gift shop.
That's right.
Listen, my sister's a history teacher, and she came in there and got so many posters. Gianna helped her get all kinds of stuff for her classroom, and she's got it up there. She loves it.
That's awesome.
So yeah. Well, Keith, I could keep you here forever, and I know we could come up with things to talk about because, golly, I just love you, Keith, and I just thank you for your time. Is there anything else that we need to cover? That I missed?
Not that one other event that we had this summer that I thought was pretty cool. I shared with you about the church group coming in, but Molly's tours downtown.
Yes.
Molly does a great job downtown with tours and stuff. In fact, we've partnered with her this year for our visitors that come for the World War II Memorial. If they want to take a tour down there, we have an opportunity to do that with Molly. But this summer, she approached me about doing a little boot camp for children. And so they came to the museum early in the morning, one morning before we opened, and we had, I gave them a little lecture, and we watched a movie called The Big Submarine. And then after they were done at the museum, they went over to the waterfront park, and they made little submarines out of Twinkies. So it was pretty cool. But we had a lot of fun.
I love Molly.
So that's one of the other interesting things that we get to do at the museum, partnering with people like Molly.
You're into so much. I could stay here all day naming the things that you're involved in. So thank you, and thank you for your passion and how much you care, because it shows. And anybody that enters that museum knows how much you love and care about the things in there, just everything. So I just appreciate everything you do for our community.
Well, I appreciate that, Alison. Thanks for having me here. And before I go, I wanted to present you with a challenge coin. Since you come every week, here's a challenge coin from the museum.
This might make me cry, Keith.
Got to give it to you the right way. There you go.
Oh my gosh. Oh, this is my favorite. Thank you so much.
You bet.
This is awesome. Guys, please go check out the St.Marys Sub Museum in downtown St. Marys. Make sure you talk to Keith Post and Gianna there in the Sub Museum. This is the 24th episode of the Get in Your Business podcast. Thank you, Keith.
Thank you.